Bueno, ya estamos acá en un nuevo episodio de Hablemos de Bitcoin. Como saben, es un espacio de difusión que hemos creado Satoshi en Venezuela para mantenernos activos, incluso a pesar de la pandemia, la locura, el virus, el 2020 en sí mismo. Hoy, como ven, ya estamos conectados hoy con Cory Klipstein de Swan Bitcoin, quien nos va a estar acompañando para contarnos un poco la experiencia sobre la empresa, cómo crear un negocio en Bitcoin, el enfoque del dólar cost average y muchas cosas más. Inclusive creo que vamos a comentar un poco la acción de precios de estos últimos días. Swan Bitcoin, Swag, and some merchandise. Thanks for being here. Before we start, I will display a message of our sponsors. Le digo a Cory que antes de empezar vamos a tener un mensaje de nuestros patrocinantes que, bueno, como saben, hacen posible que este podcast exista, que el proyecto de Satoshi en Venezuela se mantenga andando. Así que, bueno, es bueno tenerlos allí con nosotros siempre presentes y vamos sin más a escucharlos.
Satoshi en Venezuela es patrocinado por Leden, una suite de servicios que te ayudan a ahorrar y ganar más Bitcoin y dólares digitales. Nuestros productos te permiten ganar intereses, pedir créditos en dólares y obtener créditos para comprar más Bitcoin. Nuestras cuentas de ahorro en Bitcoin y dólares USDC, en colaboración con Genesis, ofrecen las mejores tasas de interés en el mercado, trabajando con la institución más establecida y con mayor transparencia de la industria. Puedes comenzar a ganar el 6,5% anual en tu Bitcoin y el 10% anual en tu USDC desde ya, y mantendremos estas tasas por el resto del año. Nuestro servicio B2X, exclusivamente en Lend, te permite utilizar el Bitcoin que ya tienes para obtener un crédito en dólares y comprar el mismo monto de Bitcoin, utilizando un crédito respaldado por Bitcoin para duplicar el monto de Bitcoin que posees. Y si necesitas dólares, pero no quieres vender tus Bitcoin, puedes seguir siendo el dueño de tus Bitcoin y obtener un crédito en dólares en 24 horas. ¿Quieres ponerle alas a tus Satoshis? Aprende más en leden.io. Ok, ahora un mensaje de Bitrefill, que además está en su sexto cumpleaños. La manera más sencilla de vivir en cripto es utilizando Bitrefill. En este caso, para recordarte que puedes utilizar Bitcoins vía Lightning Network o directamente on-chain para recargar tu saldo tanto en dólares como en euros en las cuentas Fiat, Dirty Fiat digitales que tiene Bitrefill. Que bueno, recuérdalo. La forma más sencilla de vivir en cripto es Bitrefill. Y finalmente, un mensaje de Hodl, que hace poco lanzó una plataforma de préstamos P2P, en este caso para recordarte que tienen el mercado de P2P sin KYC más interesante que hay por allí actualmente, donde puedes comprar bitcoins inclusive con tus bolívares, y ten en cuenta que puedes crear las ofertas con los precios que tú decidas. Recuerda además que entre las ventajas tienes que no tiene KYC, es sin custodia y además es amistoso con el usuario. Y nada, finalmente recordarte que te suscribas al canal de Satoshi en Venezuela, que es donde ocurre la magia actualmente. Listo, se murió el momento publicitario. Vamos a continuar ahora acá con Cory. Thanks a lot for being here. It's a great pleasure to finally have this conversation with you, Cory. And how are you, man? How are you?
Muy bien. Mucho gusto estar aquí. No hablo español. Más un poquito. So let's do the rest in English and you can tell them what I said.
Perfecto, ya vieron que incluso nos saludó un poco allí en español, pero bueno, como ya lo dijo, vamos a estar conversando en inglés y yo les traduciré los puntos clave de lo que nos cuente Cory el día de hoy. Que muchas gracias a las personas que nos acompañan, quienes vean esto luego y por supuesto a nuestro invitado Cory Klipstein. Cory, when did you discover Bitcoin, man? And when the Bitcoin thing do the thing in your mind and you said, man, maybe I just work with this.
Well, third time was the charm for me. Someone gave me some in January of 2014 and I did nothing and I lost it. And then someone else had some investments in some Bitcoin companies and I helped him put together a sale of some of his ownership in late 2015. And it still didn't take. I was just busy with other startup things. And then finally in spring of 2017, with all of the noise about the price run up, the mind virus took hold and I've been in Bitcoin ever since, 3.5 years.
Okay, and so then you discovered this like relative, not so long, but very hard.
Yeah, it got hold of me and it would never let go.
Perfect. Let me translate this. Le preguntamos entonces a Cory por en qué momento descubre Bitcoin y cuándo es que se entrega definitivamente esta pasión, a este virus de la mente, como lo describí ahí al final. Dice que en 2014 escuchó sobre eso, pero no le interesó mucho. Inclusive tuvo algunos ads que probablemente forman parte de la riqueza de todos los hodlers de Bitcoin. Y en 2015 también se relaciona con gente que estaba haciendo inversiones en Bitcoin, pero tampoco le toma mucho interés. Y es en la primavera de 2016 cuando finalmente hace clic y desde allí, bueno, como nos dijo, no ha dejado de estar en Bitcoin. But before we continue this conversation and before we go through Swan and Bitcoin education and all the stuff, I want to ask you about the price action of these days and the bullish news that we had with MicroStrategy and PayPal and Square. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I and the Swan team are getting together to watch the MicroStrategy earnings call or listen to it after this. So that should be pretty fun. I think Michael Saylor has been a very welcome and successful addition to an already very strong roster of Bitcoin pitchmen and pitchwomen that make the case for Bitcoin. In particular, I think he is way out on the efficient frontier of being credible and also good at pitching Bitcoin. I don't think there's anyone on the planet today that is better at both of those things. He's somewhere out there. There might be somebody that has a better pitch, but they're not as credible. There might be somebody more credible, but they don't have as good a pitch. So that's a pretty special spot he's occupying in 2020.
Okay, and also we have almost the monthly close, the highest monthly close since 2017.
Yeah,
That was the bull run. And do you think that we're in the middle of the bull run, or there are things that could need before?
no, I think we're in a bull run, but people have to be ready for pullbacks. I think it wasn't a straight run up in 2017 either. There were plenty of pullbacks of 30%, 40% on the way up. So I'd just, kind of be ready for that. Somebody was asking, are we done with 4-digit Bitcoin forever? And, I personally think there's more than a 50% chance that we see sub 10K Bitcoin again at some point, maybe next week. We'll see. So,
okay.
But that's the whole approach, as we'll get into what I think is the best way to buy Bitcoin is always be buying Bitcoin.
Okay, and we will be talking about that. And let me translate this. Le preguntamos a Cory, sobre un poco cómo ve la actualidad de Bitcoin, porque bueno, estamos en medio, si están viendo el precio mientras estamos transmitiendo o haciendo el episodio del día de hoy, seguramente verán que estamos ahí luchando por encima de los 13K. Y como yo le comentaba, estamos cerca de cerrar el mes de octubre con uno de los altos históricos que no se veían desde diciembre de 2017, cuando tuvimos el all-time high del precio de Bitcoin. Entonces me dice que particularmente destaca el papel de Michael Saylor, CEO de MicroStrategy, que fue quien empujó la decisión de comprar 425 millones de dólares en Bitcoins, y que hoy por hoy está unos $100 en profit sobre esa inversión, pero que se ve que quiere tenerlo para un largo aliento. Entonces nos comentaba que el puesto que está ostentando dentro de la comunidad a día de hoy, Michael, es uno muy particular, porque no solamente es que tiene un buen discurso para hablar de Bitcoin, sino es que además tiene la credibilidad del inversionista y del CEO de experiencia. Michael Saylor es uno de los CEOs más longevos que tiene las finanzas estadounidenses. Entonces, bueno, por allí eso hace sentido. Luego yo le comentaba si cree que estamos en medio de un bull run, y ha sido una observación bastante interesante, que es que siempre debemos recordar que en medio de todo bull run van a haber pullbacks, es decir, retrocesos de precio, en donde bien sea porque busca liquidez, bien sea porque hay traders sobreapalancados y demasiado optimistas con longs exagerados. Siempre va a haber estos movimientos de corrección. Entonces no meter todos los huevos a la canasta de una vez, pero bueno, considerar que la tendencia alcista parece bastante evidente. Vamos a continuar, porque además nos hacía un comentario sobre que incluso en la tendencia alcista uno puede saber que comprar Bitcoin siempre es la mejor forma de obtenerlos, y este episodio es sobre dollar cost average, que es poco lo que facilita Swan Bitcoin, y es precisamente lo que vamos a preguntar ahora. So after you start in the Bitcoin rabbit hole, you start different projects. First, givebitcoin.com that evolves or had this side project that become bigger, that is Swan Bitcoin. Can you tell us about this process of being an entrepreneur in Bitcoin?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give a little bit of a background on my career leading up to this. I used to work for very big companies. I worked for Microsoft, Morgan Stanley, McKinsey and Company, management consulting firm, and Google most recently. I have an MBA from the University of Chicago, where there were obviously always been a very popular place for lots of kids from Latin America to go to grad school. So it was nice to build out my network in that part of the world. And I left Google in 2013 to get into startups, into the Silicon Valley ecosystem, and have been advising and investing in Silicon Valley startups for the last 7.5 years, including operating on occasion like I am now. So, 4 years into that, I discovered Bitcoin, and little by little, Bitcoin just started to take over my professional activities because I was reading and listening to podcasts, 50 hours a week or whatever. I started dipping my toe into the space and taking on some consulting work in late 2017. And then by fall of 2018, I was full-time Bitcoin pretty much, and just looking for a way to do something in the space. It wasn't until April of 2019, so about a year and a half ago, I had the idea for GiveBitcoin.io and started work on that project about a year and a half ago. We got that project, Give Bitcoin, live in the market by November of 2019. And it became very obvious as people started using it to give Bitcoin to themselves that we should probably have a much more prominent version of the product that was focused on self-purchase as opposed to buying for somebody else. And so that was the impetus for splitting the buy for yourself out into a different product and giving it a different brand. And obviously the rise of Swan in 2020, we launched in March, has shown that that was a good idea, and that the market really wanted that very specific, focused on automatic recurring purchases, Bitcoin only, safe and easy to share with your friends and family and not have them confused by altcoins and trading and all of the things that they see on exchanges. with much lower fees than Cash App and Coinbase's retail app for the US audience. So it's been a heck of a rocket ship ride so far for the company. And obviously now we're facing down a Bitcoin bull market on top of that. So we're very excited, but also tired and busy.
Well, thanks a lot for sharing part of your timing here. And I think that is a really great discovering to create a project and then realizing that maybe you can launch a project and another product that fits better in the market without doing an ICO and a scammy thing. So it is really great to see Bitcoiners doing the thing. And let me translate this, please. Le preguntamos entonces a Cory sobre los proyectos que desembocan en Swan Bitcoin. Antes de crear Swan Bitcoin existía Gift Bitcoin, que es como una plataforma a través de la que tú podías darle bitcoins a familiares cercanos, pero que en parte mostró el producto que sería luego Swan, que era que muchos de los usuarios de Gift Bitcoin se terminaban dando los bitcoins a sí mismos. Entonces separan los dos productos. El primero en lanzarse fue Gift Bitcoin en noviembre de 2019. En marzo de 2020 lanzan entonces Swan Bitcoin con la idea de que puedas hacer compras, pequeñas compras automatizadas de Bitcoin y que sea de una manera bastante amable para el usuario, pero que además, como es un producto naciente, tiene la cualidad competitiva de tener menores tasas de, sí, menores comisiones que en el caso de otras herramientas que podrían hacer lo mismo, como Coinbase Retail y Cash App, por ejemplo, que es una de las más famosas. Y vemos entonces cómo es el cambio de perspectiva del proyecto sin la necesidad de buscar fondos de manera medio estafosa, como ha sido a costumbre en el ecosistema, sobre todo cripto, entre comillas. Bueno, ahora sí podemos ir a hablar un poco sobre Swan, que es el proyecto como bandera. Why Swan, Cory? Why did you decide the name of Swan?
Well, I happen to be a massive fan of Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the author of Fooled by Randomness, The Black Swan, Bed of Crusties, Anti-Fragile, Skin in the Game. Been reading him since 2002 or 2001, whenever the first article about him appeared in the New Yorker by Malcolm Gladwell. I just became pretty obsessed with his views and kind of how he sees the world. And, you know, Bitcoin to me is like the perfect example of a black swan. It's something that only maybe a dozen or a few dozen people were sort of working toward still, in the mid-aughts or late part of the first decade of the century, digital eCash. And it just has such a massive impact on the entire world. And it was totally, out of left field, as we say, or an unknown to the other 7.5 billion people on the planet. So that really is the definition of a black swan. And then the other way we kind of use it is, a swan is born kind of as an ugly duckling and then develops over time to become a beautiful swan. And that's not too dissimilar, right? We've got something that was, in its infancy was maybe kind of ugly, maybe only used for drugs. It was just a curiosity, but it's clearly becoming something that's extremely important to people around the world. It is no longer an ugly duckling. It has become a beautiful swan. So that was kind of the two reasons for the name.
Okay, nice to know it. Le preguntamos a Cory por qué deciden colocarle Swan, que sería como la traducción de cisne, y nos dice que es fan del autor de Antifrágil, por ejemplo, de Nicolás Taleb. Me falta uno de los nombres, pero bueno, el autor de Antifrágil, que tiene un libro además que también se llama El Cisne, y de donde toma esta idea. Cuando nos explica un poco qué es lo que estaría por detrás, es esa idea de algo desconocido, algo que puede ser muy sorprendente para una gran cantidad de personas no sé, como en el caso de Bitcoin propiamente, que es conocido por una cantidad muy ínfima de la población y que de repente pueda revelarse a toda el resto de la población, sigue siendo algo que pudiese tener entonces ese efecto como el de los cisnes negros, esa sorpresa que sucede en los mercados. Para él entonces Bitcoin puede ser ese gran cisne, sí, esa gran irrupción que, bueno, hemos estado viviendo desde 2009. Okay, so we now know the name, a little about the history, but what is exactly Swan Bitcoin, Cory?
Yeah, so we generally talk about it as the safe and easy way to buy Bitcoin. So we make it incredibly simple in a few minutes to set up automatic recurring purchases straight from your bank account into Bitcoin, and also including free automatic withdrawals. So you can, essentially stack straight to cold storage without having to take any other actions. And we also have a philosophy of keeping fees as low as possible. So we're 60 to 80% lower than Coinbase for their automatic recurring purchase feature, and I think it's like 23 to 60% cheaper than Cash App, depending on what tier you're in with Swan. So definitely the lowest fees in the U.S. for automatic recurring purchase. And then the other half of the company is really all around education. I'm really fond of saying that the amount of value that someone is comfortable storing in Bitcoin is correlated to their understanding of Bitcoin. And so really education is our marketing, and the more that we can do to educate people about Bitcoin and also make Bitcoiners comfortable that we are going to educate their friends and their family and their coworkers and their social networks about Bitcoin, we want to be that safe and easy entry point for new coiners to get into Bitcoin. That's why, the very first thing that we put on our blog was a piece I wrote in March called 10 million Bitcoiners. And that really is the goal, is to onboard 10 million new US Bitcoiners through Swan.
Okay, thanks. And let me translate this, and I will add some of the questions in the live comments. Ok, le preguntamos entonces a Cory un poco sobre qué es como tal Swan Bitcoin. Nos dice que el objetivo de la empresa, del proyecto, es ser la manera más sencilla y segura de comprar Bitcoins de manera automatizada y regular. Esto es un poco coincidiendo con esta idea que nos comentaba al principio de que lo mejor que puedes hacer para interactuar con Bitcoin es comprar un poco cada vez. Entonces, comprar un poco cada vez de manera automatizada es el servicio que ofrecen. Y la idea es que sea no solamente lo más sencillo, sino también lo más barato. Puede llegar a estar por debajo 80% de las comisiones en Coinbase y hasta 25-30% por debajo de las comisiones de Cash App, algo que en Estados Unidos hace que sea un producto bastante interesante. Y además tienes la posibilidad de que los Satoshi salgan del DCA, de la compra programada y automatizada que tienes en Swan, directamente a tu cold wallet, sin hacer mucho más que, me imagino, colocar y setear ahí la dirección. En parte nos comenta que la misión de educar, de compartir conocimiento con otros usuarios, coincide con la idea de hacer marketing de Bitcoin, porque al final, mientras mejor y más información tiene un Bitcoiner, probablemente mucho más responsable se hace sobre sus Satoshi. No vas a empezar corriendo un nodo, no vas a empezar utilizando un cold wallet. La idea es avanzar en el proceso de educación, que en cierto punto es inclusive una estrategia de marketing para ellos, porque al tiempo que crean contenido, al tiempo que ayudan a la gente a conocer y aprender sobre Bitcoin, pues van generando y manteniendo su posición como el sitio más seguro y fácil para obtener los ads. Okay, I will be adding some of the questions. I see that you are in the chat too. That is great.
Yeah, I figured while you're doing the translations, I'll chat with the people in the chat. Practice my Spanish a little bit.
Great. Okay, we have a question about if you will be working someday in Venezuela, and I want to connect this with a question that I had. If you expect to be out of the United someday?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. This is a very large market, and it's So there's a lot of growth potential just staying really focused on one market. And, it's almost a different product when you go into a different banking system and different regulations, and the complexity multiplies very, very quickly. I'll give the example of, you could go to Europe and you could build a product that you think is good for the EU, and you follow, most of the guidelines, but then each individual country can still decide to do something more stringent or anti-cryptocurrency or whatever. And so you need a legal team, ready to do that. And then in the product, you have to, all of a sudden turn off Netherlands or, or do something different. So it becomes very, very difficult. One particular thing in our product that's different than we could do anywhere else in the world is you're allowed to initiate a bank transfer from the vendor side. So we can actually do a pull from a user's bank account as long as we have their information. Every other country in the world, the banking system works on a push. So the user has to set it up on their side. So there's just, that's just an example. I'm not saying it's right the way that we do it. It's just different. And we'd have to architect that differently and essentially start to support different versions of the product as we go internationally. So our goal is really to get on very, very firm footing through the bull market, and to be able, if things keep going in cycles and there's a trough in, 2022, 2023 or whatever, we want to make sure that we're profitable, that we're, a very strong team with a very strong product and have lots of optionality, in a couple of years. What we've seen over and over again from Bitcoin companies in the past is they overextend and get into too many areas, and they grow too fast, or they do things that require a lot of manual support. And that's fine in bull market times. And then when the trough comes, they have all the staff, they have these offices, they have investors that expect all these things from them. And all of a sudden they start adding altcoins, or they go into blockchain technology, and we do not want to do that, and we never will do that. So we've built a business model and a way of scaling that will get to profitability very quickly, and will never, ever require us to do anything that we don't want to do.
Ok, perfect. And let me translate this. Preguntábamos por la posibilidad de ver los servicios de Swan Bitcoin en Venezuela o fuera de las fronteras de Estados Unidos. Y Cory lo que nos explica es que la idea es crear un producto que sea lo suficientemente fuerte para que pueda mantenerse a flote primero en el mercado estadounidense, que es suficientemente grande. Por allí muchas empresas ven que un usuario en Latinoamérica representa como la 10ª parte de lo que tienen capital para disponer un usuario en Estados Unidos. Entonces, las proporciones allí como que resultan bastante significativas para como el enfoque en ese mercado. Pero, sin embargo, dice que, bueno, habría que ver cómo termina de ir el bull market, cuánto dura. La idea es poder estar y poder responder durante esta tendencia y mantener el producto viable y todavía capaz de generar ingresos, inclusive si hubiese una tendencia bajista, sin la necesidad de añadir shitcoin, sin añadir otros productos de inversión, que la idea es mantenerse Bitcoin only. Entonces, en ese sentido puede resultar difícil dar el salto hacia otros mercados en donde no solamente vas a tener que mantener la calidad del producto, sino adecuarte a nuevas realidades bancarias. Y allí nos hacía el comentario de cómo pueden dar respuesta a ciertos escenarios en Estados Unidos, lo que no sería tan viable en otros lugares. Acá tenemos otra, we have another question that is, what is the benefit of Swan in comparison with other projects that work with the same thing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there aren't that many really, I guess, that are, Bitcoin only, just doing automatic recurring purchase. I think we're the only one in the US anyway. So I guess I expect there to be many, many more in the future. I often tell people, you talk to investors, and I am an investor in a lot of different startups, and we always talk about, is this something that you can own completely, or do you just have to build a really strong brand and try to grab as much share as possible? And I would put this in the latter category, because just like there are, millions of currency exchange desks and, thousands to millions of companies and stores selling gold, I expect it to be like that with Bitcoin. You know, everybody's going to be selling Bitcoin. Square's Cash App sells Bitcoin. Obviously, all the exchanges like Coinbase and Kraken sell it. These, you know, sort of like budding financial institutions like Unchained and BlockFi and River, like obviously they sell Bitcoin. You know, so I think it's more about doing it in a specific way that is appealing to people and doing it really well and doing the education and marketing side extremely well so that you get a big share of a massive market and being early in the market. You know, just because, you know, there's lots of toothpaste sellers doesn't mean that Crest isn't a very valuable brand. You know, they got there early and built a huge brand. And just because there's a million different kinds of soda doesn't mean that Coca-Cola isn't a valuable company. They are. So I think we're trying to build a very valuable company in what is essentially, you know, something that I think a lot of companies will do over time, but I think we will be a special player in that market.
Ok, let me translate this. Le preguntábamos entonces a Cory por, bueno, cuáles son los beneficios en comparación con otros productos que están haciendo más o menos lo mismo, como ya habíamos comentado, Coinbase y Cash App como los más populares. Y resulta que Cory piensa que a pesar de que estos sean tan populares, el momento temprano en el que está entrando Swan Bitcoin a este tipo de servicios, que no hay tantas opciones, y además con el enfoque, que en breve le preguntaremos más sobre ese enfoque en la educación, que han tratado de tomar con fuerza para hacer el marketing de la plataforma, son una serie de elementos que los van a ayudar a diferenciarse. Y eso además tomando en cuenta el objetivo de, bueno, mantenerse ofreciendo un servicio de calidad y un servicio que no decaiga a pesar de que la tendencia haga que la cosa se ponga muy candente. Además, esta idea de que siempre la ventaja del pionero, la ventaja de la primera generación de empresas, en el caso de Swan Bitcoin sería una primera generación de empresas de este tipo de compras automatizadas de Bitcoin, entonces eso también les ayuda a proyectarse como ofrecer esos beneficios que están hoy día ya, las bajas comisiones, esta idea de que puedas enseñar incluso a tu familia y amigos a que usen Bitcoin, entonces es allí como con lo que se están apalancando. Ahora le voy a preguntar un poco sobre ese equipo de Bitcoiners que están en Swan, porque si ustedes checan la página, ahorita yo voy a entrar para mostrarlo aquí todo, hay un team ahí interesante de Bitcoiners y quisiera saber cómo se hace para juntar este grupo. Okay, Cory, thanks. And how is to build a team of believers as you, a team of Bitcoiners that are down to create the new generation of Bitcoiners and help people through their own rabbit hole path? Because seeing the page, I would share it, and we have Jan Pritzker. I had the pleasure to interview here, and you have Gigi. You have many great people in your team. I'm displaying the website right now. How did you make this, man?
Well, I think at one point we experimented a little bit with trying to hire people with specific skills, but they end up not working out because they're not into Bitcoin nearly enough. So we stopped trying to hire people that weren't from Bitcoin and bring them into Bitcoin, and instead just looked through the pool of Bitcoiners out there, and it was a requirement that they be into Bitcoin to get involved with us. So it's worked out really well. Yeah, I mean, you just brought up some of the people there. You know, Jan, I hunted Jan down starting in, you know, right after having the idea for Give Bitcoin, and, you know, read his book when it was still in PDF form before he released it. And we met up at Bitcoin 2019 in San Francisco. I actually met him, Parker Lewis, and Stefan Livera within about 5 minutes of each other. in 3 quick little asides. I was planning to meet Stefan and Jan, and then there was this Parker guy that was talking to Jan, and that ended up being Parker Lewis. So yeah, I can't stress enough how important it is to get to these Bitcoin conferences if you want to work in the industry or just want to like participate in it more. It's just it's great to be able to break bread with these people and have some fun and have a drink and, you know, get over your little Twitter spats and just enjoy being Bitcoiners. You know, I give an example. Like I sometimes I argue with Dan Held quite a lot on both in Telegram groups and on Twitter sometimes. But when we're in person, it never comes up. We agree on everything and we just like have drinks and, you know, he's a good guy and I'm a okay guy and we just have fun, you know, just as a small example. So yeah, almost all of them have been really inbound. You know, I hunted Jan. I had been on a bunch of podcasts around the launch of Give Bitcoin, including Citizen Bitcoin, which is Brady Swenson's podcast. And I vaguely remembered that he mentioned doing marketing or something. It was in the back of my head. And so in December, when things started to get really busy and we needed more people, I was like, that was my favorite podcast that I was on. I really enjoyed talking to that guy. I think he did something in marketing. I'll take a warm body, like anything. And then it ended up, you know, he had, you know, almost 2 decades of digital marketing experience and all these incredible skills, you know, beyond the media production and hosting. He's also an incredible writer. He's a, you know, former champion debater, so he can really take a side of an issue and really tease out the things that are important. So it was great to bring him on. We actually brought on Brandon Quittem at the same time. So they both actually started in December as we were gearing up for Swan, Brandon as a consultant and Brady very quickly as a full-time member of the team. And then, you know, the rest of the engineering team, both Jorn and Gigi, both just reached out, you know, via DMs on Twitter and said, like what you're doing, do you need engineers? And that's how that happened. And then we just, you know, for our support manager, we just put that out on Twitter and said like, hey, everybody show us your best friend that you think could do support for Swan. And we kind of narrowed that down. And, you know, the only person I interviewed was Reed, and he was just so obviously the right person for the job. The guy's like you know, he meditates every day and goes rock climbing and is very Zen and very Buddha. So when somebody's rude on an email to support or in chat or something, like he doesn't care. He just helps them out. So he's the perfect temperament.
Okay, perfect. Let me translate this for the audience. Le preguntamos entonces cómo se hace para juntar este team de Bitcoiners que, como fui mostrando allí, Jan Pritzker, autor de Inventemos Bitcoin, que lo hemos tenido acá en el canal. También tenemos a Citizen Brady, que ahora es el host del podcast de Swan Signal. Deberían escuchar ese podcast, está bastante bueno. Ese último que tuvieron a Michael Saylor con una mujer que era como de la Fed, y también estuvo Cory. Ese episodio está bastante interesante. Se lo voy a dejar en la descripción del video y todo para que lo vean. Y nos dice que la forma fue principalmente haciendo lobby, haciendo vida en conferencias, conociendo a otros bitcoiners. En el caso particular de Jan Pritzker fue como una cacería bien enfocada directamente de parte de Cory, después de haber leído el libro. Ese libro también recomiendo su lectura, Inventemos Bitcoin, un libro de sencilla lectura y que explica bastante claramente qué es Bitcoin y otros conceptos clave allí. Además, ayer lo tuvimos acá en el canal y nos dice que esa idea de ir a las conferencias, de estar en los eventos, de compartir con otros bitcoiners, salir de la burbuja Twitter y estar un poco in real life, en eventos de carne y hueso, es lo que apalancó la posibilidad de crear esto. Nos dice que inclusive en redes sociales se puede ver él discutiendo, como por ejemplo con Dan Held, que es un bitcoiner bastante conocido, con el que han tenido diferencias en redes sociales, en grupos de Telegram, etcétera, pero que al final cuando se ven, ¿no? Eso no... Es que mucho de la conversación en vivo cambia completamente lo que uno puede hacer en redes sociales. Entonces, bueno, creo que por ahí nos podemos ir con esa idea. Y bueno, que al final es mucho mejor, si uno está emprendiendo en Bitcoin, conseguirse bitcoiners que estén dispuestos a ir al proyecto, a gente que no tenga mucha cercanía con Bitcoin porque probablemente va a ser difícil. Okay, we have a question here that maybe will be interesting. While you will try to stay Bitcoin only, will you support things that run in Bitcoin sidechains like RSK, stablecoins on that network, like dollar on chain?
I don't know. We'll see what the world looks like in a few years. I mean, we are Bitcoin only, but things that are built on Bitcoin over time, whether it's stateless chains or, obviously Lightning will support over time. I'm not up to speed on what's been going on with RSK. I know it was, a disappointment to a lot of people in the Bitcoin space that they decided to sell a token. So we'll see if they back off from that or kind of what happens with, I think it was Riff or something like that back in 2018 or 2017. So yeah, I guess we'll wait and see. But people doing awesome things on Bitcoin, will be supportive. I don't think there's going to be that much use for like dollars on Bitcoin, in the US anyway. So it would basically, a few things would have to happen. We'd have to go international and those markets would have to care about dollars on Bitcoin. I don't know. It's probably not going to happen with the Swan product.
Ok, le preguntábamos aquí rápidamente a Cory si de repente como RSK es una sidechain que se ha creado alrededor de Bitcoin, si es posible que hagamos una integración y nos dice que a pesar de que, bueno, en el caso de RSKI ya están las reservas con el token que se vendió en su momento, como son productos que se están desarrollando sobre Bitcoin, pueden resultar interesantes, pero que igual deberían pasar varios cambios de magnitud en el negocio de Bitcoin, de Swan Bitcoin, como volverse internacionales y que en los mercados en donde esté Swan Bitcoin haya real interés en los dólares on-chain. Okay, let me see. You are almost answering the questions here, but not problem at all. Can a U.S. resident sell bitcoins on Swan, or you are only you have your own liquidity providers?
So yeah, we plug into a bunch of different sources of liquidity. So it's not our own Bitcoin. We're just basically using OTC desks to fill the orders.
So a U.S. resident cannot sell bitcoins on your platform.
Not yet. Yeah, we'll probably add it in Q1. Right now it's purchase only, and you'll probably never be able to send Bitcoin to us for the purpose of selling. So with Swan, you can either take it off platform into self-custody or move it to Unchained or Casa or Trezor or whatever. Or you can leave it with our custodian, which is Prime Trust. And they use Fireblocks on the back end, which is like the physical custody of the Bitcoin. That's a really good, well-regarded custody setup. It's the same one used by Binance, Huobi, OKX, Bittrex, and a ton of crypto funds and players in the space for the US. But we highly recommend, as soon as you're able and comfortable, to take self-custody, not your keys, not your coins. So sells will actually only be for people that have left their Bitcoin custodied with Swan. That's the plan anyway. So, yep.
Ok, le preguntamos eso que está allí en una de las preguntas de los comentarios sobre si es posible vender bitcoins a través de la plataforma. Nos dice que es algo que están trabajando para el primer cuarto del año que viene, así que nos estamos llevando una primicia acá de una de Satoshi en Venezuela. Tienen preparado la posibilidad de que todo y en Swan puedan entonces venderlo. No es quizás el approach que tienen. Hizo bastante énfasis en que debes tener la custodia de tus propias llaves, que a pesar de que la plataforma sea confiable y él esté aquí dando la cara, igual ten tú tus llaves, custodia tú tus bitcoins, pero que bueno, va a ser posible entonces poder vender los bitcoins siempre y cuando sean parte de lo que está acá. Bueno, en respaldo dentro de la plataforma. I want to ask this, that is a question about how you are offering education, but connecting with this Swan signal, because I think that education I think that the way that we spread this education are really related. So maybe these two are connected, or is me looking on things?
No, you're right. So we don't actually have a marketing department. We just have an education department. Brady's head of education, and we do it a lot of different ways. We do, as you were mentioning, we have the Swan Signal show, which is every Tuesday generally, and that pairs to people of interest to Bitcoiners, usually like a Bitcoiner and maybe somebody from the macro investing world. We've had guests like we had Michael Saylor on with Danielle DiMartino Booth a couple of weeks ago. We had Vijay Boyapati with Raul Powell. We had Jan Pritzker attempt to orange pill Eric Townsend, the host of Macro Voices, who's been notorious for not quite understanding Bitcoin. And then we have just, good Bitcoin CEOs on as well. Like today, we just this morning had Will Reeves from Fold talking to Jan about Fold and about Swan, and I joined for some of that conversation. And then on Fridays, we have what we call Swan Lounge, which is a little bit more casual and, often talks about price. And we have a little bit more of a free-flowing format. There's usually 4 or 5 people talking, and it's a bit more of a round table. So that one is really fun, and we can have people come and do announcements and just drop in. It's more of like a variety show about Bitcoin, Bitcoiners hanging out with Bitcoiners. That one is wildly popular so far. I think it's 4 or 5 weeks in, and the views are almost as big as Swan Signal. So it's pretty cool. And then on the education side, obviously we have some good books. So you can go to swanbitcoin.com/free book, and you can get a copy of Jan's book, Inventing Bitcoin, for free. That's open to anyone globally. And it's a fantastic book, 4.9 stars on Amazon. This is the book that Dan Tapiero fills a suitcase with when he goes on his big global trips talking to macro investors, and he always passes out a copy of Jan's book. So it's pretty high praise. I think Nick Carter from Castle Island also said that it was the best introductory book for getting people into Bitcoin. So I think there are a lot of good ones out there. I'm obviously still a huge fan of the Little Bitcoin book. I love the Internet of Money, Andreas's talks. I really love the Bitcoin Standard. But the reason that I hunted Jan down was because I personally responded to that one, and I thought it was the best that I had read so far. And that's why we like to give that to our users, because it's a 2-hour read. It's a 2-hour listen with Guy Swan from a different Swan with 2 N's. Guy Swan from Bitcoin Audible did the audio version of that book, and it's really good. And now we're going to be giving away Gigi's book soon as well, which is 21 lessons. And then I just finished a book with my friend, and who's a great author named Matt Ruby. That one's called Bright Orange Future. And that's essentially the 12 chapters of The Gift of Bitcoin, the 12 chapters that someone who got Bitcoin through Give Bitcoin received those over the next 12 months while their Bitcoin was locked up. So that's now a book, and it's in the final stages of being packaged and adding some illustrations and things like that. So we'll have 3 books. Still working with one of our investors and advisors, Andrew Edstrom, about giving away his book to people, which is called Why Buy Bitcoin, which is another great one. And then we've got an ebook coming out that's packaging up some of Robert Breedlove's best pieces. He's also a part owner of the company. So we'll have that out soon as well. So I think there's a lot of audio content and video content and other things that we can do over time. We just want to keep on, doing fun things. We have cartoons coming out with our new cartoon characters. So that should be interesting. It's all about Bitcoin education. That's what makes people want to buy. And at the end of the day, we sell Bitcoin.
Well, let us know if you need some help with the translation, because Spanish people really love to read things in Spanish. Yeah. Let me translate this. Tenemos la pregunta sobre cuáles son esos materiales o cuáles son las cosas que hacen en cuanto a educación. Entonces, primero nos dice Cory que no tienen un departamento de marketing, sino un departamento educativo, haciendo énfasis nuevamente en la labor de Brady, de Citizen Podcast, que además es el host de Swan Signal. Entonces tienen Swan Signal, que es un show los martes, en donde generalmente tienen invitados de macroeconomía, analistas financieros estadounidenses y bitcoiners. Entonces es como un debate allí en cierto punto. Y tienen otro show también en el canal de YouTube de Swan Bitcoin, Swan Lounge, que es más como una conversación entre muchos bitcoiners, donde algunos incluso se sienten tan cómodos como para dar anuncios de sus propios proyectos. Entonces por allí, ahí se ve cómo van resolviendo un poco desde el punto de vista del audiovisual. Pero además tienen el libro de Jan Pritzker, a quien personalmente Cory ya nos había contado que reclutó para Swan. Inventemos Bitcoin. También están allí en conversaciones para tener el libro de Gigi, quien forma parte del equipo también. Ese es 21 lecciones sobre Bitcoin. El libro de Cory, que está todavía por terminarse. Otro libro de otro inversionista de Swan. Trabajos de Robert Breedlove. O sea, hay mucho material que están trabajando para compartir, para que la gente sepa, conozca más sobre Bitcoin. Así que, bueno, si quieren descargarse una vez el libro de Jan Pritzker en inglés, está ahí gratis en la página de Swan Bitcoin /freebook, swanbitcoin.com/freebook. Y si quieren tenerlo en español, en el grupo de Telegram de Satoshi en Venezuela, entran al grupo, van a archivos y allí está gratis también, porque Jan también nos lo dio para compartirlo. Le interesa que se lea el libro y es un libro bastante recomendado. Nos comentaba Cory que incluso analistas como Dan Trappiero o Nick Carter recomiendan este libro como puerta de entrada. Hay muchos otros libros que nos comentaba Cory que pueden ser interesantes, pero bueno, este es el show en donde estamos hablando de Swan, así que bueno. Vamos a ver si tenemos algunas otras preguntas por acá. Bueno, ok. I want to ask you about this referral model that is very hot in the comments. Can you tell us how people can win sats referring people to Swan?
Yeah, sure. Earn sats. Okay. So yeah, we call it Swan Force, and it's just our affiliate program. And that's actually cool because it's open to people globally. So we have a lot of people around the world that, just hang out on Bitcoin Twitter or do YouTube videos. And send US audience to Swan. So you can go to swanbitcoin.com/enlist, ENLIST. I'm sure you'll put the URL in there and sign up. And then, anybody that comes in through your link, they get $10 of free Bitcoin when they sign up, and you get 25% of our fees for the next 3 years. So it's pretty powerful. It's probably, 40 to 50% of our new users come through referrals via this program. We have, I think about 600 people doing it right now. Some pretty big names like, Max Kaiser and Lynn Alden and Breedlove send us a lot of people, which is neat. But we also have a ton of people that just post a lot and shill their links all over Twitter. or Reddit or wherever, and they stack some sats that way, and those sats may end up being, I certainly believe they're going to end up being worth a lot more in the future. So,
okay, le estábamos preguntando a Cory sobre un programa de referidos que hay para trabajar de la mano de la plataforma, refiriendo a gente a que utilice, particularmente público estadounidense, porque bueno, como ha dicho Cory en varias oportunidades, la plataforma trabaja solamente con estadounidenses. Entonces nos dice que ha sido un éxito. Swan Force tiene hasta 600 personas haciendo marketing con esta herramienta y tiene nombres interesantes como Max Kaiser, el propio Robert Breedlove, otros usuarios de Twitter, de otras redes sociales que están haciendo, bastante trabajo con esta fuerza de referidos, ganando a la vez algunos satoshis allí, así que está ahí esa opción. Can you tell me how is the link so I can add it here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's swanbitcoin.com/enlist, ENLIST. Like joining the military, enlist.
Okay. Yeah, I have. Let me share it here.
You join the Swan Force. This is my Swan Force mug.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, we are showing it here.
Nice.
Así es como se ve la página cuando entras en el link en list. Lo voy a compartir de una vez en los comentarios aquí y lo voy a añadir también a la descripción del video. So we are almost closing, Cory, and thanks a lot for your time. I want to ask you for the future of Bitcoin, since it's really cool to close with Bitcoiner thoughts on the future. Let me ask, in 3 halvings since now, 12 years since now, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin? Is Bitcoin still around? What is that?
Bitcoin will be all around us in 12 years. I think it will be everyone on the planet will know about it. Most of them will have some. Most of them will use it either all the time or on occasion. And yeah, I think we'll be well on our way into the bright orange future, as I like to talk about. I think there's a lot of things going sideways or poorly around the world right now. And I think Bitcoin is just this beacon of light, this beacon of hope that gives us a way out of so many of these, issues that we have within nations and between nations, largely just because, with an unfair playing field, or just like it's the wrong protocol, we're running on the wrong protocol. We need to switch to a better protocol. Bitcoin is a better protocol than arguing about exchange rates of paper money.
Great. Really bullish answer. Let me translate this and let's close the conversation. Él le preguntaba sobre su visión a futuro, de repente de aquí a unos 12 años, unos 3 halvings más. Nos dice que Bitcoin va a estar aquí alrededor y probablemente todo el mundo va a tener inclusive un poco de Bitcoins, así que ver que muchas de las cosas que están sucediendo ahorita van a terminar derivando en ese futuro en donde, bueno, el cambio de protocolo, el cambio de red, el cambio de funcionamiento de cómo se hacen las cosas pudiese venir empujado también por Bitcoin y, bueno, lo que ofrece el dinero realmente descentralizado. Así que esa ha sido nuestra conversación del día de hoy con Cory Klipstein de Swan Bitcoin. Muchas gracias. Thanks a lot for your time, Cory.
Mucho gusto. Thank you so much, Javier.
Así que, bueno, muchas gracias a las personas que nos hayan acompañado en la transmisión en vivo de este episodio. También a las personas que lo disfruten luego, porque, bueno, los episodios no mueren directamente en la transmisión. Y vamos a estar mañana con el chileno Guillermo Torrealba. También hablemos de Bitcoin, en este caso para discutir un poco la realidad chilena, cómo es la movida de Bitcoin allá, mucho más. Así que, bueno, acompáñennos.
I prefer to talk about the ice cream companies. Think about how large that ice cream is for them. They see that every single day and they feel that real inflation rates of whatever up to 10%. That's real. So I think it's going to be increasingly the interesting move. I think people have already seen what it does with the stock alone. I think the position that Square took was made up by the gains in their stock price that very day. And so there seems to be a no-lose situation for these companies.